Hi everyone, today let's talk about the bridge collapsing in Baltimore. Then we'll get into all the usual data and charts. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So unless you've been living under a rock, you saw that the bridge collapsed in the port of Baltimore. And this is what it looks like. You can see this big ship here did collide with the bridge. And this is the Francis Scott Key Bridge. So pretty important historical bridge. Now it's been destroyed by this ship. From what I can tell, it was a mechanical failure of some kind. The ship hit one of the pylons and destroyed basically the whole bridge. The federal government already said that they're going to come out and help and pay for the bridge to be fixed. But from the economic perspective, this is going to jam up logistics lines in the region, could actually send the price of logistics even higher, which have already been sent higher from the situations that we saw in the Red Sea. So just something to keep on your radar. Pretty interesting. Here's some more pictures of the dumpster fire that is the Baltimore Harbor right now. This is one of the top ports for auto shipping. You can see they handled almost 850,000 vehicles last year, which was its 13th consecutive year of leading all imports for vehicles. Look at all of those vehicles. Absolutely massive numbers. And they do about $55 billion worth of imports every single year. So this is a very important harbor, and it's going to be offline at least for a little bit. We'll see how it plays out in terms of timelines. There's also some other traffic. You can see retailers like Home Depot, Bob's Furniture, IKEA, Amazon were also going to be impacted by this situation. And then we could also see energy delays. Gasoline being shipped from the Gulf Coast could be affected. So this is going to have wide sweeping effects across multiple industries. And at a minimum, it's going to send shipping prices higher. Moving over to fear and greed, we did stay at a 67. This is the exact same close. You can see sideways over the last couple of days. Still extreme greed here for strength as well as momentum. Breadth, no change. Put call ratio, no change. Volatility continues to rise just slightly. Safe haven demand still in fear. It was in fear yesterday, so moving sideways there, pretty interesting. And then junk bond demand still in extreme greed. Moving over to seasonality, you can see we are in a bullish period historically. Could see a slight dip into tomorrow or the next day. We were expecting a little bit of a down move here for the Russell as well as the NASDAQ, and we did get one, but it wasn't a lot. Historically, it should have been a little bit more, so maybe this is going to have some follow through into tomorrow's session. Otherwise, after we get that dip, it is expected to be bought up and then relatively bullish here into the open of April. Potentially some mid-month weakness around the 11th, 12th, and the 15th, but then historically bullish into the end of April. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see core durable goods was better than expected. Forecast was much higher than the previous read, and that was all good. And then you can see month over month also better than expected, so everything good there. And then you can see consumer confidence not super great, and the previous number was revised down, so that's a little bit concerning. And then you can see a 5-year note auction came in a little bit below the previous read. And then looking at tomorrow, there's pretty much nothing here on the calendar. But looking at Thursday, you can see there is absolutely a ton here. So you have GDP, Chicago PMI, consumer sentiment for Michigan, as well as inflation expectations for Michigan. And then don't forget, this is Good Friday. So markets are going to be closed, but that does not postpone the data based on the calendar. So still expecting PCE as well as Fed Powell speaking. So definitely going to have some effects if you hold positions going into the end of the Thursday session. Moving over to Max Payne, you can see options jumped up a lot here, 2.5 million. Put call ratio still in that same range. And these put walls got even bigger here. We did get some calls coming in around 430, so you have a little bit of a call wall there. Some here at 520, 525, 522, right in this range, pretty much at the money for the Thursday session. But again, there's just so many puts, I can't imagine we're really going to move below 515. And if we did get to 515, that's still about a 1% down move. 520 has some puts there as well, so 520 seems like it makes sense. Also makes sense why that's pretty much where the stock is right now, but 515 to 520 would make sense to me as well. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the SPY, you can see we did break out. So we were rallying after hours yesterday. We did get above that level. And then in that last candle before market open, you can see we dipped, sideways chop, and then we broke down into the end of the session, took out that trend line, took out the longer term trend line on the hourly chart. And then you can see after hours, we bounced into it. Daily chart still holding that trend line, momentum bearish, RSI breaking down. Again, critical zone still looks like a flag setup on the daily chart. Let's go ahead and extend out this trend line. That would would give us a price target right around that next level, 517.20. See if this area holds. Pretty critical level. It looked okay early in the session, getting above 520.88, and then we broke it pretty hard right at the end of the session. So right now, short-term bearish, but longer-term sitting on support. And then you got the 9 EMA sitting in that same zone, 517.31, and then the 21 sitting at 513.80. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see we did hit that 144 EMA here on the hourly chart on the SPY at 518.75, touched that level as well as the lower ATR band. And you can see we did take out that bullish ATR stop, so we are now in bearish territory. You can see the purple dots there. Definitely in bearish. We're in that lower quadrant. We'll see if this continues lower or not. And then looking at the 4-hour chart, we're not quite there yet. The ATR stop is at 517.64. You also have the 55 EMA there at 517.44. Big selling on that last candle, and then momentum on the volume weighted MACD continues to be bearish. And then looking at the daily chart, critical level 8 EMA 518.16. If that level breaks, then you have the mid-range down at 513.06, which does seem a little bit more realistic relative to the max pain that we talked about. Moving over to the Qs, you can see very similar thesis. Jumped pre-market, sold into the open, held the level here at the highly traded zone, and then broke down on that last candle of the day. Big selling, and you can see massive volume on that candle. And then you can see it here, still in that trading range on the daily chart, still holding above the 9 EMA, which is at 441.47. Have a level here, 441.81. Then you have the 21 EMA, 440.73, all in that same zone. VWAP there as well, 440.22. Momentum stepping into bearish. RSI right at the SMA, technically below it just by a few pennies. You can see it here, but volume stepping up on that selling, which is a little bit concerning. Did get a slight bounce after hours, and it's holding the level, 443.91. As long as that holds, we should be in good shape. But really, I want to see it get back above this trend line, hold that, and then push to that 446.60 level. We'll see how it does. That selling candle at the end of the day was quite weak. Moving over to the Tasty charts for the Qs, you can see we did get that dip, hit that bottom ATR band. That is at 443.12. We'll see if that holds. We did get a slight bounce from there, and you can see that after hours price action. Currently holding, and then you have that 144 EMA in that same zone, 443.57. Big volume spike on that selling, not what you would want to see. Momentum still rolling to bullish a little bit. And then looking at that 4-hour chart, still holding that ATR stop right in that 89 EMA at 441.20. And you can see the ATR stop just above that 441.50 or so. And then we are still actually above the 55 EMA at 442.61 on the 4-hour chart. So several levels of support, and we're not even close to that last ATR band that's at 439.38. So still holding this structure. Would have wanted to see this push towards that upper ATR band, but it just didn't do it. So we got the push, sideways chop. We didn't get that breakout like I thought we might. And now we're seeing a little bit of selling price action there. And then looking at the daily chart, still hovering right on top of that 8 EMA, 442.85. And then you have that mid-range here, 440.58. And we have not seen any volume coming through. Momentum still slightly bearish. So we'll see if we get any changes. Medium time frame still slightly bullish, holding above all the EMAs and SMAs. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell was down 0.81. It is still holding right in that same zone above the level 204.63. It's up a little bit after hours, got a slight bounce just like everything else. Momentum bearish. Really not saying much of anything. This would probably be better defined as neutral momentum, kind of chopping between slightly bearish and neutral. RSI breaking down still. You can see this doesn't look great. It broke down, bounced slightly yesterday, selling off a little bit more. And then you can see the Dow also in that same zone, 0.03, didn't move a whole lot, very little changes here today. But I would like to highlight here on the hourly chart for the Russell, you can see we've gotten two pretty strong pushes trying to get up, and then we sold off, and then tried to get up here again, and then sold off. So definitely some selling happening, some liquidity dumps happening. And you can see the volume on that selling candle again. You can see how important this is on the hourly chart, 200 SMA, 144 EMA, right in the same zone. And then moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see Apple did sell off 0.67. It is at that critical point here. We added this trend line yesterday off of yesterday's lows, and now we are still holding that level. And then Tesla got a little bit of a bounce off of some news of a self-driving test drive, and that jumped right to the trend line and rejected a little bit from there. Still up 2.92%, momentum bullish, RSI trending bullish, got some good volume on the day. Again, super critical zone for Apple, needs to hold this. If it doesn't, this is going to be a big fall in my opinion. Potentially about $15 of downside potential, or about a 10% move for Apple is in the cards. And then here for Tesla, if it breaks out, maybe we see some structure, but this is still very much a downtrend. And then briefly, here is that Tesla article. You can see stock rising on the free trial of its self-driving. Not going to get into the details, but understand that's why it jumped. Moving over to Broadcom and NVIDIA continuing to follow these. Broadcom still looking like a lower high setup. It's right at the trend line. Looks like it's going to dip into this 21 EMA and VWAP zone 1314, and then 9 EMA down at 1292. Then I have a level 1281. We'll see if any of these areas hold. Right now still looks like a lower high setup. And then looking at NVIDIA, big sell off today, 2.57%. Hit the trend line, touched it again here today. So this is an important trend line, continues to grind at that level. Momentum and RSI both look bearish. You can see that big breakdown here. Line trending down, got back above it, breaking down, so that is concerning. Got the 9 EMA at 908.10, and then the 21 877.96. But if these start to sell off, that could be a big bearish indicator here for the NASDAQ. Moving over to Meta and Google, continuing to follow up on these lawsuit groups. You can see Meta down 1.42%. It's at the 21 and VWAP. We expected selling. You can see it here on the RSI. Selling off, retesting, selling off. Looks weak. In terms of structure, sideways chop, lower high setup. Still holding the level. Hasn't tested it yet recently at 489.67. We'll see if that level holds. Then you have the highly traded zone down here, 468.84, and then the 55 EMA at the next level. But we'll see if we get any more selling. It does look bearish right now. And then Google continuing its bullish run. Tested the level here, went higher here today, 0.36 to the upside, throwing some wicks. Momentum still fading, RSI still hovering. So we'll see how this plays. Right now still looks bullish. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples continuing to hold 75.40. This still looks like a double top and a breakdown of structure, but 21 EMA continues to hold, tested that yesterday, and the level holding here. Momentum and RSI both bearish, but still holding support, so we'll see how that plays. It's up a little bit after hours, and you can see discretionaries slightly positive on the day, 0.13, momentum neutral, RSI still holding slightly bullish. Need that 21 to hold right in that same zone as VWAP and the 9 EMA, right in that 181.50 level. In terms of structure, this still looks like a rising wedge, so I would expect it to go a little bit higher. This hasn't gotten too tight yet, so would hold support, push to that upper level, and then eventually this will break down, but right now it still looks okay in my opinion. Moving over to industrials and transports, these have looked quite weak over the last couple days, and these have been driving markets higher over the last couple of months, and now they are selling off a little bit. Pretty interesting, 3 days in a row of selling on industrials after 3 days in a row of bullishness. Could be a slight pullback. Still got the 9 EMA there at 123.61, 21 sitting at 122.46. Then you have some trend support down here around that 121.68 area, and the highly traded zone in this same consolidation. So we'll see if those levels hold. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. And then looking at transports, 3 days in a row of selling here as well. Took out the 9 and 21s as well as the VWAP. And then you have support down here at 68.58. We'll see if that level holds. And then the next level, 67.85. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. So seeing some weakness across some of these sectors that have been very strong, which could lead to some overall downside as we see breadth start to contract. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth, you can see these continue to sell off over the last 3 days. 55 EMA at 61.30, 61.38. Momentum and RSI both bearish. Looks like a double top. If this zone breaks, we should expect more selling. Like I said, breadth is contracting, and we can see it across multiple sectors, and it is showing up on breadth on the 20 and the 50. You can see we're still holding a higher low on both of these. We'll see if it breaks this zone, super important. If it gets through this midpoint here, 68.66 on the 50-day, and then here at the 200 SMA, if those zones break down and we start to see lower lows, I would expect markets to accelerate to the downside. You can already see bearish momentum here. We got a slight dip into bearish, bounced slightly, and now we're getting more bearish. And it looks like the 50-day is going to move into bearish momentum over the next couple of days. Moving over to yields, these continue to hover right in line. I've been saying it for a couple of days in a row now. I think yields are probably going to hold in this zone. As markets have come to terms with what the Fed is planning, I might move these out of the rotation unless they start to make some major moves. They've been moving sideways for a couple of months now, and I do kind of expect them to do that. You can see we got here in December, had a slight dip, and now we're back here in March. Similarly on the 10-year, got here in December, same thing, same zone, and these are not really driving markets right now in my opinion. Moving over to the dollar, we did get a slight bounce. It ended up dipping a little bit lower, but still holding that 144 EMA, still overall an uptrend. A little bit of consolidation at resistance. I still think this is going to go higher. You can see that longer term structure broke out of this wedge formation. It's right at resistance. If it breaks, should push to the 505.50 level. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, but it's not doing it quite yet. Just continuing to hover there. We'll see how it plays out. Moving over to bonds, you can see more selling on JNK right to the level 94.82. Just barely touched it, found some support. Momentum and RSI both look bearish. Then you can see TLT did get a slight bounce. Almost to the highly traded zone, not doing much anything. I would really expect this to kind of hold in this region, just like we talked about on yields. It's been here for a while. We got into the same zone back here in January after getting a pretty substantial breakdown from about $100. Still holding support, so this could kind of roll to bullish. It does kind of look like it might. It's technically holding a slightly higher low. Doesn't mean that it's going to break higher here yet, but it does look okay. Kind of a jacked up head and shoulders, maybe left shoulder, head, right shoulder. If it does break above this 96.50 level, however, that is going to be quite bullish. We're not really there yet. Does look okay here today. Slight step up on volume. You can see this MACD is rolling towards bullish a little bit, so that looks okay. Maybe finding a little bit of strength, but nothing convincing yet in my opinion. Moving over to volatility, move index, doing nothing here, continuing to hold. VIX, however, threw a wick to that support level, and then ended up positive on the day. Again, momentum rolling to bullish. RSI not doing much of anything. Seems to be finding a little bit of support in this zone. Doesn't mean anything's going to happen. We did have a lot of chopping in the same zone here going back to mid-November, but it did show a little bit of strength. We'll see how this plays out in tomorrow's price action. Markets looked weak at the end of the session. VIX finding a little bit of support. Might see some slight bearishness tomorrow. Moving over to my accounts, I was down just a little bit on the day, not a whole lot. I did roll up early in the session to try to play that breakout. It looked okay, broke the level, and then sure enough, it rolled back down and I had to roll down into tomorrow's session. So we'll see how it plays out. Right now, it looks okay. The close was actually super low, 443.30, and then we bounced all the way back to 444. I did not roll down into the 443s, thank goodness. Still holding the 444s, so I should have a little bit less of a loss on these shares as well as a little bit less of a loss on this long-term covered call. Still managed to collect some money on the day. But like I said, I rolled out early in the session to 445 and then rolled back down to 444. So I wasn't able to collect as much money today as I would have otherwise. Wanted to play for the upside, just didn't get any follow through. Otherwise, pretty much the same position for tomorrow, 444 for about $1.50 on each of those. Sold 3 of those for tomorrow, so about 450. And then 205 did not move that at all. Small profit here, looking at about another $100 on that position. And that as well is up a little bit after hours. So see how that plays out. Again, if it rallies aggressive, I can roll it out as strike since it does expire tomorrow. And that's true for all of these. So looking to make about $500 hopefully if markets hold or go up a little bit. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the bridge in Baltimore and what the economic effects of that will be, or anything about the markets or charts that I should be watching. What are you looking at right now? Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of today's video, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.